Hello, my name's Casey, and today I'm going to talk to you about classroom management. Classroom management is a continuous learning experience, and while some things may work with some classes, there will always be one class that just won't respond in the way that we hope for. Sometimes it's easy to forget the basics too, especially when we're having a busy or stressful day. Hopefully some of these tips will be useful for you as the new school year approaches. So I'm going to start by asking you the question, who are young learners? What do you think of when I ask you, who are they? Well, I might think of their characteristics. So they're quite small, maybe their demeanour, their minds and their bodies are still developing, as is their cognitive and physical development. So that means their abilities differ to adults. Therefore, their needs differ to adults. And what do they need? How is that different to what adults need? Why are these questions so important when we talk about classroom management? Well, when we're implementing these processes in the classroom, these questions should be in the forefront of our minds. Okay. So we're looking at the question, who are young learners? I'm going to go through 6 characteristics of young learners. Number 1, they have a short attention span. John Holt once said, "We ask children to do for most of a day what few adults are able to do for even an hour." And that's really important because we can't expect children to sit down for hours at a time. If we couldn't do it, they couldn't do it. Number 2, children are curious, which means they're natural learners. And again, this is very important, and this should be utilised in the classroom. Number 3, children are always learning. Whether they're playing, listening, talking, every experience is a learning experience. Number 4, children are self-centred. Children don't act out because they want attention. They act out because they need attention. Young learners need individual attention and approval to develop properly. Number 5, children are very imaginative. Albert Einstein once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." And really, again, this should be utilised in the classroom. Capture children's imaginations. Lastly, children are impressionable. Children are great imitators, so give them something great to imitate. If you want children to show you respect in the classroom, you need to model that respectful behaviour and show them that you want them to do that. Okay, so I've got a question to ask you now. Can you think of any more characteristics of young learners? I can think of at least 4 more. I think young learners are energetic. They always seem to have so much energy. Young learners are playful. And again, we can be using this in the classroom. We can make things fun with games. Young learners are impulsive. And young learners are confident as well. These are all characteristics that we should be thinking about when we're teaching children. Now we're going to talk about what young learners need. And really we're going to be looking at the basics now. Consistently and rigorously following the basics is really the fundamentals to good classroom management. So the first strategy, rules. We need to establish rules from the beginning and gently remind students of them throughout the year. I always start the new school year by telling students the rules of the classroom. And this can be done in English for all grades, but modelling rules with actions may be necessary for the younger grades. We should never expect students to know our rules, because our rules may be completely different to another teacher's. For example, students will be allowed to run around and talk freely if they're playing sports, but this won't be the case in a math class. The more we gently remind students of the rules, the more ingrained they will become. The next strategy, keep it short. Really, you want to plan 5 minutes for each activity and have lots of backups. If you're bored, the students will also be bored. Research quick and easy games to play songs, role play, worksheets, and always be prepared with more activities than you need. It's better to have too many than too little. Be prepared for activities to not work, and don't take it to heart if things fail. We can have the best intentions in the world and put days of planning into a lesson for it not to go as smoothly as planned. And that's okay. Some things will work for some classes that won't work for others. If you have backup activities ready to go, you're never going to be stuck wondering what to do next. Let's have a look at this question. Let's see if you've been listening. How many activities is most ideal for a 40-minute class? If we want 5 minutes for each activity, do we want 4 activities, 5 activities, or 8 activities? What do you think? Very good. Yes, the answer is 8. 8 planned activities means your students are likely to stay more engaged throughout the entire lesson, and engaged students are better learners. Okay, so my next strategy. You want to be varying activities. Don't just give them lots of reading and lots of writing to do. Use all of the skills. Before I share with you the activities I might use in a classroom, I'd like you to take a minute to think of some of your favourites. Do you try to vary the activities that you use, or do you always use the same ones? Are there ones you'd like to try, but unsure of how to scaffold or implement it? Let's go through my list. Maybe you'll have some more to add. So the kinds of activities that I like to use, especially with young learners, are games, songs, role play, quizzes, problem solving, worksheets, and my personal favourite, dancing. The internet is a great tool for suggestions. I challenge myself to find one new game every month and try it with a class. It keeps me interested, which invariably keeps my students interested too. Another great way to discover new activities is by observing your peers while teaching. If I'm ever unsure of how to scaffold an activity, I'll ask to observe a peer who can do it successfully and learn through this. All it takes is seeing something done once to make a difference. Plan interesting and motivating lessons. Keep it varied for you and the students to enjoy. Learning doesn't have to be sitting down at a chair all day writing alone. Utilise the space of the classroom. Aim to develop fine and gross motor skills alongside academic knowledge. Give students pair or group activities. The more varied the lessons, the better the learning experience for all students. Okay, so my next strategy, number 4, praise. So research shows that the ideal praise to criticism ratio is 5:1. So what that means is, for every negative comment, we should be sharing 5 positive comments. Students who learn or think differently often receive negative feedback. Praise can really turn around behaviour and improve students' attitudes about learning. One of the simplest and most powerful tools to engage and motivate your students is by providing praise when deserved. A teacher who shouts at a class constantly for bad behaviour is only going to demotivate the class and send them in a spiral of more bad behaviour. So I've got another question for you now. Look at these pictures. I've got teacher A and teacher B. Who are students likely to respond better to? Who would you respond better to? Very good, yes, it's teacher B, of course. You should be building solid relationships with your students. Treat them with respect and show them you're willing to listen to them and you'll find this reciprocated in most cases. A year spent shouting at a class that don't want to listen is a year wasted for everyone. If a class is being disruptive, think what you can do differently for next time and implement it. Can I add more interesting activities? Can I change the seating plan? Can I have a reward system? These are all questions you can ask yourself when you're reeling from a difficult class. Okay, next, peer interaction. What does that mean? Well, it means letting your students talk to each other. One of my favourite activities is role-playing, and it's great for students to practice in pairs, especially when learning a language. Asking and answering questions or practicing sentence structures, these are all essential in a language classroom. Cooperative learning is essential for students to understand how to share ideas constructively, learning how others think and react to problems, and practicing oral language skills. Constructive interaction is essential in an English class, so don't be afraid to use it often. My next strategy, make it easy. Simplify the activities. Have easy steps. Have short, clear instructions. Demonstrate, use actions, use gestures. Gestures, voices, and images can help a student understand what you're trying to say. Slow down your speaking and try to build up information slowly so it's easy for the students to digest. If you throw too much information at them too quickly, they won't understand and they'll lose interest. Some teachers can go down the rabbit hole with giving long and hard-to-follow instructions. Sometimes the best way to instruct an activity is by giving simple instructions and letting the students figure it out. You'll be really surprised with how often students can understand. My next strategy, make it easy. I want you to have a think of some actions you could use for stand up, sit down, be quiet, raise your hand, open your book. Gestures can really help when given instructions. These should be nice and easy, but sometimes we forget how important our actions are with instructions, especially for younger grades. For learners that respond best to visual stimuli, actions can be the essential bridge to understanding. So what would I do there? Stand up, sit down, be quiet, raise your hand, open your book. Nice and easy. My next strategy, add excitement. Use teams, use rewards and forfeits, use props. An exciting lesson isn't just fun for the students, you'll enjoy it too. Activities that have students up and about, moving parts of their body, using the classroom space will also keep lessons exciting. I believe we're all inherently competitive, so think about how you can best use this competitiveness in their learning. Visual aids are so often in the classroom right in front of us while we're teaching. For example, whenever I teach school vocabulary, I make sure to utilise the items in the classroom to its fullest extent. And really, these lessons should be fun and exciting for everyone. I teach because I enjoy the work I do, even though it's hard sometimes and some days can be difficult. But lessons for the most part should be interesting and enjoyable to teach, just as much for the teacher as it should be for the student. So, I'm going to ask you another question. What are your favourite classroom games to play? Do you have any go-to games? I'm going to go through a few of my favourite now. And if you're unfamiliar with any of mine and want to try them out, YouTube and Google have loads of information on each of these. So I love playing Pictionary, Stop the Bus, Simon Says, Hangman, Board Race, Hot Seat. There are so many different games you can play in your classroom, and students love them. The last basic strategy, I like to use attention grabbers. I think most teachers do. So one of my favourite go-tos, the teacher will say, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Students say, 1, 2, eyes on you. And we use these instead of shouting at the class to be quiet. When they hear the teacher saying this, they know that they need to pay attention. So one more time, the teacher will say, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. The students will say, 1, 2, eyes on you. And again, the internet has loads of suggestions for good attention grabbers. So another great one I like to use, especially with grade 1s, I will say class, class. They will say yes, yes. I like to use attention grabbers when I'm asking my students to work in pairs or groups, because sometimes it can get a bit noisy in the classroom. And that's not a bad thing, but when you want them to pay attention to you, you need them to be quiet. So now we're going to have a look at dealing with unwanted behavior. My first tip for dealing with unwanted behavior is using verbal reprimands. This sounds easy, but sometimes we can forget. Consistently shouting at a class shouldn't ever be a strategy you fall back on. So the key to this really is being calm and firm. You should always try your hardest to not let students see you angry. It's unprofessional and can escalate quickly. This isn't to say it won't happen, because there are likely to be occasions when you will raise your voice. But don't let this be your go-to way of dealing with a rowdy class. My second strategy, using the 3 strikes rule. So what does that mean? Well, I might give a student a warning, which is strike 1. First action, strike 2. Second action, strike 3. What do I mean by actions? Well, I might ask the student to stand up or move seats, or I might write a note in the class book. So the key to this really is consistency. Just make sure you keep it consistent for all students in the class. When students fully understand that there will be consequences to misbehaviour, they're less likely to repeat it. By developing a consistent 3-strike policy, your students will come to understand what is expected of them. My next tip, change the seating plan. So you should move students that are disruptive. You can either do that by moving them to the front of the class or by splitting up students that are talking. You could start the school year by assigning a seating plan or implement it whenever you need to use it. This can be preemptive or as and when is needed. My last strategy, choose your battles. If a student wants attention from the teacher by acting out, you'll be praising this unwanted behaviour by giving it to them. Acknowledging every minor misbehaviour is an unproductive use of your teaching time, and it's only going to wear you out. So choose your battles, ignore the minor incidents. Okay, so last question for the presentation. What are your most successful strategies for dealing with unwanted behaviour? Maybe you use different strategies to me. Are there any ones I've mentioned today that you'd like to try this year? If you have any questions for me, please feel free to send an email to my email address. You'll see that at the bottom of this slide. And that's the end of my presentation today. I hope you found this useful, and I wish you the best of luck for the new school year. Bye.